Hello and welcome to BlueTube, where we talk all things blue. This is part 2 of my transfer wish list for this summer under Antonio Conte. If you missed part 1 where I talk about the defenders that I want to buy, be sure to check that out. In this video I'm going to be talking about the midfielders, as it says in the title down there. In terms of the midfielders, what we first have to establish is the formation that I'm going to be basing my wish list on. And I mentioned this in my Antonio Conte video, which if you haven't checked it out, be sure to check that out as well. But I said, and I gave my reasons for this, that the most probable formation for him is not a 3-5-2, it's not a 3-4-3, it's going to be a 4-4-2/4-2-4, some kind of variation of that, but essentially a 4-4-2 formation. And that's what my transfer wish list is going to be based around, and that brings very interesting changes. In contrast with our current, or the formation that we've been running for the last few years at Chelsea, which is the 4-2-3-1, which has 2 holding midfielders and 1 attacking midfielder in terms of the central roles. A 4-4-2 kind of merges those responsibilities to produce 2 midfielders instead of 3, and that makes the situation very interesting. And before I go on to talk about what players that I want to buy and who's on my wish list, I want to sort of mention who the current midfielders in our squad are. So I look about this in kind of 3 different sections: the wingers, the defensive midfielders, and the offensive midfielders. In terms of the wingers, we have Eden Hazard, of course, we have Pedro, we have Willian, our player of the year, and we have our youngster, Kennedy. And out of those 4, I just want to mention this right now. Hazard, he's going to stay. I'm not even going to really talk about him in this video because I think it's so obvious that he has to stay at Chelsea. If you disagree with me, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to talk to you. By the way, if you have any other suggestions, you can feel free to comment your own transfer wish list in terms of the midfielders in the comment section down below, but after hearing my thoughts about them, of course. But out of those 4, someone who's very interesting is this player right here, Pedro. He joined Chelsea just last season, or just at the beginning of the 2015 season, basically summer 2015, I should say, from Barcelona. I'm sure we all have it fresh in our memories. We hijacked him under. We took him away from Manchester United, which is very satisfying. And his debut was brilliant. We won 3-2 in West Brom. I think he scored twice and assisted once, or scored once and assisted twice. I can't remember which. But yeah, he was great. But then he kind of went downhill from there. But to be fair, the whole Chelsea squad went downhill from there. But ever since Hitting's come back, ever since we've started playing, half decent football, he's actually been very, very good. He's had a very, very good work ethic, which I've been very impressed with. And he's been incredibly, he's been a lot more prolific. He's finishing chances, he's scoring goals, he's running up and down, he's getting involved in the play. And he used to do this thing where he tries to dribble the whole team, and I hated that initially, but he stopped doing that as well. He's starting to pass more, get involved in the play, and I think that's a very good sign. So even though some questions were raised at the signing of Pedro, I'm sure this is a partly controversial kind of topic, and I'm sure some of you may disagree with me on this, but I think that we should keep Pedro. I think he is absolutely quality, and I don't think it's worth going through the hassle of selling him or buying another winger, or spending millions of pounds on another winger when we already have a quality midfielder, a winger in Pedro. But of course, in my kind of dream lineup, I would have Hazard on the left, assuming a 4-4-2, Hazard on the left, Willian, our player of the year, on the right, and I'd have Pedro in the bench. So he wouldn't break into the first team probably for me, but I would still have him. He's a great player to have. And of course, another reason why I wouldn't bring in another winger would be to give Kennedy a fighting chance to make it into the team, because he has shown a lot of promise and he's been very, very good. I've been very excited to see what he's done, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the future. But there are some rumors though, linking us to other wingers. A big rumor currently is this man over here. Let me just move my mouse. Yeah, there you go. This man over here, Juan Cuadrado, and ironically, he used to be our player, and we're being linked with him now. I don't think we should buy him. In fact, as I said, I don't think we should buy any winger. But even if we did want to buy a winger, I don't think we should go for Cuadrado. We've gone down that route before. It didn't end well. It's not a wise investment. But apparently, Conte is contemplating buying Cuadrado. That was all improvised. Anyway, is thinking about getting Cuadrado. I don't think he should, but That's a rumor. Another position that I briefly mentioned is that second section of the midfield, that kind of defensive midfield, that two defenders in the 4-2-3-1. But of course, now we're in a 4-4-2, which brings an interesting twist. Now we have to kind of look at the whole central midfield as sort of one position. But I'm going to look at this from a slightly different angle. I'm going to consider, I think we should buy one kind of defensively minded defender, midfielder, and a one offensively minded midfielder. So we should buy two midfielders. Spoiler alert. So I'm going to look at it in each of those specific roles and tell you, after I told you which players that I want, how they would kind of fit into the 4-4-2 formation. Firstly, Nemanja Matic. As I said, our central midfielders consist of Nemanja Matic, Fabregas, Mikel, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek in terms of that defensive kind of midfield role. Fabregas, definitely keep him. I love the guy. I think that he would probably be one of my favorite players in the squad right now. I think he's brilliant. I think he's been the second best player of Chelsea's season, just behind Willian, of course. I think he's been brilliant. Matic, that's a different story though. He has been quite weak compared to our championship winning season. He hasn't been that glue anymore. He hasn't been that wall. You know, he's just kind of flopped around a little bit. I remember this one game when Mourinho was in charge. We subbed him on at halftime, and then we subbed him back off at the 60th minute or something. And Mourinho said in the post-match press conference that, you know, Matic, I'm worried for him because he's not very good, basically, to put it bluntly. But I still believe in Matic. I think we should hold on to him. I think it's a bit naive of us after one bad season to sell him. I think he's still got that kind of wall within him, that kind of defensive mind, that kind of incredible tackling ability within him, that Kante will be able to weed out of him. So hopefully he will stay. But someone who I think should go is this man over here, John Obi Mikel. Don't get me wrong, I love the guy. I honestly love the guy. And there's actually back about a season ago, before Hitting came in basically, everyone basically said that Mikel was bad, we should get rid of him. And everyone hated Mikel. There was so much hostility towards Mikel. Of course, there were some Chelsea fans, including me, who loved the guy throughout. But a lot of people had a lot of hostility towards him because, you know, everyone said we should sell him. But ever since Hitting came, he started playing well, and now everyone loves him, which is probably why it's difficult for me to say I think we should sell him. And here's my reasons why. I think that having him would drastically reduce the chances for Ruben Loftus-Cheek to make it into that first team, or to at least get some game time. You know, if Conte has a big game coming up, and he has to choose between, let's say some players are injured or whatever, and he's in a situation where he has to choose between Mikel and Loftus-Cheek, I think he's going to be very tempted to go for Mikel, because he's reliable, he's got experience, etc., etc. But I think it's a chance for us as a club to show Ruben Loftus-Cheek we are going to invest our resources in you, we are going to trust and believe in you, and we're going to give you a chance. And the way to do that would be to get rid of Mikel. And it hurts me to say it because I honestly love the guy. He's a veteran at the club. He's been here for about 8-9 years now, I think, which is crazy to think. But I think it's time for him to go. And it'll also help to decongest that midfield area, because in our 4-2-3-1, we had 3 central midfielders. Now we only need 2. So we're gonna need to start getting rid of some players, in my opinion. So with Mikel gone, who do we bring in? Firstly, I want to get this out of the way. We are not going to get Pogba. If we did go for him, we would have to pay an astronomical fee. Even if we were willing to pay that fee, he would not come to us because we are not playing in the Champions League, and that's a big turnoff for someone like Pogba. He's not going to join a team that's not playing in the Champions League. I just want to get that out of the way and move on. Someone who's more realistic though is Nainggolan, and you probably have read this in the news somewhere that we are being linked to them, and it's not even a rumor actually, it's a fact. We are interested in him. Conte is interested in him. In fact, he's come out publicly and said, I've been approached by Courtois and Hazard who are trying to convince me to join Chelsea, and by the way, he's Belgian as well, which is why Courtois and Hazard are kind of trying to talk him in. So this is a very realistic deal, and I think out of the it's a very realistic deal, but I don't think we should go for him. I think he's a great player. I think, we'd have to pay a very, very reasonable fee for him. And of course, Kante is very interested in him, but I do not think that you'll understand what I mean, but I don't think he's the player that we should go for. The next player that I would kind of consider is Pjanic, and this is a player that I love. I love Pjanic. I've loved him for about 2 or 3 years now. I've wanted him Chelsea ever since, for about 3 years basically. And actually before Matic joined us, I was really hoping Pjanic would join us. Of course, Matic did the job very, very well in the time that he was here. But Pjanic, he was very, very heavily linked with Manchester United in the last summer's window, and he's again this window he's being very closely related to Manchester United. So maybe that's a deal that could happen for Mourinho. But as I said, I think he's a great player. I think we'd have to pay a very reasonable fee for him, maybe around 35-40 million pounds, because he's a very good player. But I don't think he's the player that we should go for. And you guys will know what I mean when I tell you the player that I am looking at. Because I think nobody is much better suited to us than the player that I'm going to talk about later. But I think he's still brilliant. Another player is Matuidi. He plays for PSG, and we've gone against him many times in the Champions League, of course, because we've been against PSG about three years running now. And he's been very good. He has always been very, very strong. He's been very good at tackling. And I think he'd be a very, very good player for Chelsea. Honestly, I think he would. And I think we'd have to pay a pretty reasonable fee for him. But I still don't think he's the player that we should go for. If I was Antonio Conte, I think Nainggolan, Pjanic, and Matuidi are all phenomenal. They're great. Their value for money is probably good. And so they're all great players. But I would not go for any of these three if I was Conte. Before I tell you who I would go for, just for what it's worth, if I had a choice between Nainggolan, Pjanic, and Matuidi, I would go for Pjanic. I really like Pjanic, but not as much as N'Golo Kante. He burst onto the scene this season, along with multiple Leicester players. He is phenomenal. I'm in love with him right now. He is incredible. He's a French midfielder for Leicester City, as you can see for his Leicester shirt. And apparently, this is the real thing. He's a sensational player. I think he's the best central midfielder in the Premier League right now. But the real big thing is, he has a release clause of £20 million, reportedly. Very heavily reportedly. And everyone is eyeing him right now. Arsenal are looking at him. City, United, and European clubs like PSG, they're all looking at Kante right now because of that release clause. And apparently many clubs, including Chelsea, are willing to pay more than the release clause just to get that edge over other clubs. And if we could buy Kante for £40 million, I would be happy with that. Honestly, which is double his release clause. So I think Chelsea should try everything that they can to try and get Kante. He is amazing. He is glorious. I think he's just sensational, and he perfectly fits the bill for Chelsea because he has that. He can go forward, but he's very, very, very stable as a defensive midfielder. He can hold back the world. He is a wall, stronger than Donald Trump's wall. He is incredible, and also he's got some Premier League experience. In fact, he's won the Premier League title this season. Even though it's just one season, we know that he's proven in the Premier League he can deal with that physicality, he can deal with that intensity of play. So he would be on my wish list alongside Bonucci from the previous video. Now, let's look at some of the attacking options. But before we do, let's look at our squad, who we have at that attacking position. Of course, we have Oscar, and we have Fabregas, who can sometimes play forwards, but I wouldn't sell Fabregas. Oscar. This is an interesting one. Very interesting one. Because Oscar is one of those players that I really, 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 really love. And in the past, when he was rumored to leave, especially this January, I was really sad because I really, really like Oscar. I think he's a great player, but the reality is he's just not consistent enough. He doesn't score enough goals. And I think that hurts us as a club when we play. And that's one of the factors, one of the things that's holding us back from having that real dominance in the Premier League. So this is a very, very big decision for me. I love Oscar. Tell me if you disagree with me. Tell me if you hate me for saying this. But I think we should sell Oscar. I think his time has come. We've given him chances. Yeah, he has had some amazing games, but he's not that consistent enough, and he doesn't score enough goals, in my opinion. So it physically hurts me to say this. I feel like I'm being suffocated right now, but I would sell Oscar. So right now, that leaves us in the center of the midfield with Matic, Fabregas, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. It's clean, it's simple. That's all we have, right? And of course, that guy, Kante. 4 players. And of course, we need 2 players in that midfield. And now you may be wondering, okay, if we need 2 players in that midfield, why am I going to say now that we should bring in another midfielder? Why do we need another midfielder? Why do we need 5 midfielders for a position that only requires 2? Because this is my reason why. Kante is brilliant. Fabregas is brilliant. Matic is iffy. We don't know if he's going to bounce back. I think he can. I honestly do. But we don't know. He has been a bit weak this season, so we don't know about Matic. And Ruben Loftus-Cheek, as great of a player as he is, as much of a chance that I want to give him, we still have to understand that he's a youngster, and he's not going to be that kind of star that like dominates for us. He's not going to be that reliable go-to. If we have a Champions League semi-final and Kante and Matic are injured, we're not going to feel perfectly comfortable putting in Ruben Loftus-Cheek in that midfield. So I think we do need that sort of extra reinforcement. And we have Matic and we have Kante, who can defend very, very well. We have Fabregas, who's kind of a hybrid. He can play the defensive role, not as well as Kante or Matic, but he can also go forwards very, very well. He's incredible going forwards. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I would say, is similar to Fabregas. He can defend. He's actually pretty good at defending. He's very, very strong. But I think he's actually more suited for an attacking kind of role, and that's what he's done whenever we've played him in this season. So on top of those 4 players, I would add 1 extra attacking midfielders just to aid Fabregas when we need him to, because we have a lot of very defensive-minded players right now. And of course, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who's very young and inexperienced. So, who can we get? A player that I can think of is Ross Barkley. We've been linked with him very heavily over the last 2 seasons-ish. And he's reported to be available for a fee around 40-50 million pounds. I don't think that's a good deal, to be honest. I don't think Barkley is that good. Barkley's a great player. John Stones is a great player. They're all great players. I just don't think they're worth, because they're English and they're homegrown, that their price just skyrockets upwards. I don't think he's that good, if I'm honest with you. I don't think he's the type of player that we need. So I would cross out Barkley from my list. I don't think he's good enough. Another player who definitely is good enough is Riyad Mahrez, and it's very interesting to see Leicester right now, because Jamie Vardy is, as of recording this, maybe things have changed when I'm uploading this, but as of recording this, Jamie Vardy is very heavily linked to Arsenal, and Mahrez seems like he wants to leave as well. So there's a lot of players in Leicester City who want to leave the club, which I don't understand. If I was a Leicester City player right now, I would want to stay at Leicester I would do everything that I've got to stay at Leicester City, because they're literally living and creating history with every single game that they play. And maybe there's the money side, that financial boost that Leicester just can't compete with when we're talking about people like City or Chelsea or PSG that are looking at it. So maybe it's that money that contributes to it. But a lot of Leicester players do seem to want to leave, and one of them is Mahrez. And Chelsea would be, he's a sensational player. If he were to come to Chelsea, I would be pretty happy, honestly. And I don't know what the fee would be, honestly, for him, because Leicester would hold out for a lot of money, like 40-50 million pounds, because he is just that good. I think he's brilliant. It's a similar case with the defensive midfielder. I think he's amazing. I'd be happy to have him, but I just have another player in mind that I want to get. But he is a kind of a realistic player to get. He is a very good player to get, but he just wouldn't be on my transfer wish list. And also, a factor that contributes to this is because he's only been good for 1 season. We don't know if he's going to continue onwards. But you can say the same thing about Kante, but I just have a feeling that N'Golo Kante is going to be something special. He is going to be just amazing. And Mahrez could very well be as well, but he wouldn't be on my transfer wish list. Another player to consider is Isco, who is the center attacking midfielder of Real Madrid. We were actually linked with him in the last summer transfer window, and in January as well, but nothing ever happened. And he's a good player, but I don't think he's a player that we're looking for. In short, I don't think he's the player that we're looking for. I think I would much rather have someone like Mahrez over Isco. I think he's a better player. He's more suited for Premier League, etc., etc. Isco would not be on my wish list. But another Real Madrid center attacking midfielder is James Rodriguez, and this, I think, is a quite realistic deal. I think it could happen, and Rodriguez would be on my transfer wish list. He would cost a ton. He would cost probably £70 million, maybe 80, creeping up there. I would say around £70 million probably for someone as good as James Rodriguez. He has had a kind of falling out-ish with Real Madrid over this last season, and there's been a lot of speculation about him leaving. He was very heavily linked with Manchester United previously, of course. I think if I was Conte and if I was at Chelsea on the board, I would throw everything that I've got into chasing this guy, because I think he's brilliant, and I think he would unlock a lot of doors when we are at Chelsea, and when he plays at Chelsea. He would just make everything so much more fluid, and he would bring an entire new dimension to the club when we play. So he would definitely be on my transfer wish list. But if we don't manage to get Rodriguez, and I'm aware that this, as realistic as it is, because there were speculation about his position at Real Madrid, he's not happy being behind some players. I think it is a realistic deal. But if that can't happen, can't happen, my second choice would be Koke. Not Mahrez, it would be Koke. Because Koke is someone that I've actually liked for about 2 seasons now as well, that I've wanted at Chelsea. He's been very, I just think for a midfield role, having a Spanish player or someone influenced by Spanish football is very, very good. Because I think the Spanish league, La Liga, has some of the best midfielders in the world. Their style of play is so much more, very creative style of play. They pass the ball around a lot. They're very accustomed to one-touch passing, quick move, pass and move, that kind of play. And I think Koke and Rodriguez, of course, are very, very accustomed to that. And I think Koke especially, he would be available for a cheaper price than James Rodriguez probably. And I think it would be amazing if Chelsea bought Koke. But, of course, my first choice would be James Rodriguez. Another player that I forgot to put up there, I'm just remembering now, is Dimitri Payet. We are being linked with him very, very heavily, apparently for a reported cost of around £50 million, which is quite crazy in my opinion. Because he is a sensational player, don't get me wrong, he's a great player, but I don't think he's worth £50 million. I don't think, he's had one good season, it's a similar kind of story. Of course, N'Golo Kante, you can say the same thing about Kante, but I just have a feeling, and you're just gonna have to trust me on that. But I don't think Payet is worth £50 million. So he wouldn't be the player that I go to, and I don't think he would. I just don't get the feeling that Payet would do that well in the Champions League. Of course, we're not playing in the Champions League in our first season, but we're looking towards the future. This is a crucial transfer window which is really going to structure our team for however many years to come. And I think Kante would really actually be phenomenal in that kind of European competition as well. So, of course, Payet would not be on my transfer wish list. Right now, as it stands, I have Bonucci as my defender in my transfer wish list. I also have, in terms of the midfielders, I have N'Golo Kante. I also have James Rodriguez / Koke, just one of those two. James Rodriguez would be my first choice, but Koke, if we can't get Rodriguez, I would go for Koke. And that is my transfer wish list as it stands right now. That's it for this video. Of course, tune back in for my next video where I talk about the strikers that we could be potentially looking at. And I have a lot of things in mind, because the interesting thing about the striker position is when we shift from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-4-2, we have 2 strikers instead of 1. So we are going to need to buy at least 1 quality striker, maybe even 2. Who knows? I'm going to talk more about that in the next video. But guys, as I said, feel free to tell me or comment about anything that I've said in the video. If you agree with me or disagree with me, tell me your transfer wish list for the midfielders that you want at Chelsea in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, stay blue.